There were business people before 1994, they were doing very well, all peoples of this country. But most of them didn't have access to funding for starters. Secondly, didn't have access to very good schools like the one we're sitting in right now. They didn't have Endeavour South Africa at that time. So I think we are privileged. If I were to sum it up and say, where have we come from, where are we going to, I am very bullish about it, that I think every South African is quite relieved. For those who didn't believe it could happen, it has happened. I think the landscape has been well prepared for all of us to be able to thrive in whatever goals that we have. One of the closest examples is sitting next to me. Here's a white man who's an expert in black economic empowerment. Boy, in your dreams, all right? I've known Paul for quite some time, and I think he's a very good person otherwise. And that shows you that if you do not have enlightened leadership amongst all colors in this country, and somebody who can stand out and have his whole business plan around creating awareness, assisting us to understand what BE is all about, and actually earn a living out of it, and he is white. To me, that's the greatest thing we can see. Now, nationally speaking, Malika, won't take long, is to say, what is the biggest challenge for us? The biggest challenge for us, pre-1994, post-1994, is that look at all what we are doing today. All we are doing, whether you're a nurse, whether you're in landscape business, whether you're in air conditioning business, or you're in waste collection, we're actually acknowledging the fact that we're a 40 million society, not a 4 million society. So every strain, the crime, everything you can think of, the infrastructure, the capacity, is being geared and aligned for 40 million people. And that's a challenge. And that's what we're doing. That's the big thing. And lastly, if your company in post-1994 does not have in its business plan people, profits, and the planet, we're not going to read that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've had experience of starting businesses prior to 94 and post 94, so I don't know if I can share some sort of insights, because clearly, as has been mentioned, prior to 1994 was a completely different ballpark altogether. And I think, though, that there's one commonality. And the one commonality relates to the individuals that feel compelled to go into the entrepreneurship field. Now, one of the debates I have a lot with my friends who have also started businesses and are also in big business is, can you teach people to be entrepreneurs? And the answer is, I'm not quite sure. I suspect that you can. The analogy that I have in my head is that let's use the analogy of music. If you are very musically inclined and you are very good, you know that you will have no option but you're going to find yourself in a career in music. But there are others that will go into the music career they're okay, and they'll end up being session musicians and playing, I don't know, in some sort of obscure places, but they've gone into the music field and they can make a living out of it. And I suspect that that same continuum that I talk about in terms of the metaphor of music applies to entrepreneurship. I think there are those of us, I'm quite certain in this room, I certainly know that I was, and I expect from what I've just read of your brief resume that you were certainly one of these, and you were called a serial entrepreneur. I think that's a great...
Sounds ominous.
I think that's a great compliment. Because there are some of us sitting in this room today that have got no option. We just know that this is what we're going to do, and that's it. God gave us this gift, and we've got to go and do it. We've got no option. And there'll be others in the room who are further down that continuum. I don't want to use that as a value judgment, but let's say the other side of the continuum, who would feel, well, maybe I can do it. Is it a good idea? Maybe I should think about starting this business, or should I go and get a job in the bank? And I'm quite certain those sort of issues are confronting you as well. And those, I suppose, are the dilemmas that people like Endeavour are facing today. I can tell you, prior to 1994, if you didn't have a propensity to want to be an entrepreneur, you were just left way out of it. You were just nothing. I think the people that, in my experience anyway, that started businesses in that time were those that had to, because they could do nothing else. I think today, as was pointed out earlier on, we've got a massive infrastructure. I'm not so sure that it works all the time. Endeavour works, from my experience I can certainly say that, but I'm thinking of some of the bank's initiatives, and I'm thinking of a lot of the other NGOs' initiatives. There's a lot of talk, there's a lot of hot air, there's a lot of people earning money in this arena, but the fact is that service is there for you to take advantage of, and I agree that you know, if you really want to get into the entrepreneurship field, gee whiz, I mean, the environment right now is, I've never ever seen it as enabling as it is right now. But having said that, I think there's a massive amount that has to get done, because at the end of the day, what I'm going to try and push in this discussion here is that it's actually all about the individual, and that's what drives the individual. And you know, sometimes it's not so good to have too much support around you, because you start to rely on it. And maybe what you should do is, maybe the guys prior to 1994 did us a favor, because you had no support, so you had to go and do it yourself. And that kind of activity made you quite resilient.
To come back to what Ian was saying, pre-94, I went to a school that groomed us to become the chairman of Anglo. That's what you went to. You went to the school because it was an academic school, and it had absolutely no clue about trades. It had no clue about working for yourself, being an entrepreneur. It just said, you're going to go into the big corporate market and you're going to climb the ladder, and there you are, you're going to become the chairman of Anglo. And strangely enough, the last chairman of Anglo was an old boy. I remember once we saw the Old Boys magazine, and there was a whole page dedicated to people at various levels of Anglo. It was just really, really funny. And I think that if those types of schools still exist, and it's a concern as a parent, or where are you going to send your kid? Because you want them to be able to understand there's a greater world out there than just simply taking a job or something like that. So perhaps there's a legacy, educational legacy thing, lack of education. This 5% figure, I would dispute it. I mean, the entire second economy is made up of, I wouldn't call it entrepreneurship, but subsistence entrepreneurship. Perhaps doesn't fit in with the definition of what they have defined as an entrepreneur.